Hi, my name is Barbra Dillon. I'm the editor-in-chief of Fanbase Press, and I'm honored to be moderating the Compiling a Comics Anthology panel for San Diego Comic-Con at Home with a very talented group of creators. In this discussion, we will be addressing how comic book anthologies provide a valuable opportunity for new and seasoned creators to not only have their work published, but to reach new audiences with bite-sized examples of their work. We'll also be discussing the creative process of building a comic book anthology from the perspective of the editor and the creator. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce each of our panelists. I will intro each one and they will talk a little bit about themselves. So first and foremost, we've got Russell Nohelty. Russell?
Hi, I am Russell Nohelty. I'm the publisher of Fanbase Press, one of the editors of the Cthulhu Is Hard to Spell anthology series, and also a creator. I've done books like Ichabod Jones' Monster Hunter, Katrina Hates the Dead. I've written over 20 novels, and I write creative things.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us, Russell. Next, we have Kris Simon. Hi, Kris.
Hi, how are you? My name is Kris Simon, and I am the editor-in-chief for Netmarble F&C, which is a mobile video game company. And I take their properties and I expand them into comics and novels and webtoons. And I'm also a part of the Cthulhu Is Hard to Spell anthologies, as well as Insider Art and several other anthologies throughout my career. So so I'm looking forward to talking to everybody today about what that entails.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us, Kris. We're also joined by Ray Anthony Height. Hi, Ray.
Hi, Barbara. I am Ray Anthony Height. I am also part of the Cthulhu Is Hard to Spell. I worked on Terrible Twos with Kris and Russell, which great friends of mine. It's always a pleasure when I get to work with them. And I'm an artist creator. I mostly do work for Marvel. I just did work on Star Wars Dr. Aphra. I have their own series called Midnight Tiger. And I do a bunch of different anthologies just so I can stretch my legs creatively.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us, Ray. We also have Brandie June. Hi, Brandie.
Hi, my name's Brandie June. I'm a writer and playwright. I've been a contributing writer with Cthulhu Is Hard to Spell, The Terrible Twos, and we'll be contributing to the next anthology for it as well. I've also just recently debuted my first novel, Goldspun, which is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling from the Miller daughter's point of view, but she's a con artist and Rumpelstiltskin's a mysterious fairy. So I love all sorts of retellings and reimaginings.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us, Brandie. And last but certainly not least, we have Carolyn Carter. Hi, Carolyn.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Carter. I'm a freelance artist and a contributing artist to a couple of anthologies. The Cthulhu Is Hard to Spell, Terrible Twos, also Insider Art. So it's been sort of my first sort of professional forays into the comic scene. So that's been really exciting. I've been working on the side with other smaller projects. Currently doing some art direction with a small indie video game company. So trying to get some stuff together for them. And yeah, just really excited to practice bringing more stories to life so I can do some more of that. So looking forward to it. Working with specifically Brandie's my partner in crime, but I got to work with both Russell and Kris before, so it was a real pleasure, and I'm really excited to work on more stuff for them too. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us, Carolyn, as well. And let's go ahead and dive right into the panel and our questions. First and foremost, I'd love for the audience to learn about your interest and involvement in comic book anthologies. So why do you feel that they are valuable for creators, and how has your involvement helped or elevated your work in comics? Ray, why don't we start with you?
Well, for me, it's like I basically said before, I'm working on properties, large IPs and stuff like that. And that's cool. It's great to play in someone else's playground, but anthologies have allowed me to really dive into things other than mainstream or superhero comics or whatever. Like for Terrible Twos, I did this great story, which is a commentary on sexual harassment and racism, but I couched it with the Cthulhu Elder Gods kind of thing, which was very, very fun. I worked on what is that? Well, I worked on The Good Fight, which was about gatekeeping in comics. And just to be able to express a little bit more than typical, hero's journey story, to kind of give my own voice and to collaborate with people who I never would have collaborated with on mainstream books. And it just kind of helps you. If you're any creative at any level, do anthologies. Short stories are great. You don't have this huge commitment. And a good story you can tell, Russell, as we know, and Kris, 2 pages or 20 pages. A good story is a good story. So it's a great exercise.
Well, and Ray said something to me after we finished the anthology, because he does so much work. He's like constantly doing work for Marvel and working on other people's work. And he said, this was the first time I got to stretch my creator-owned legs in a long time. And so if you're an established creator, you even get 2 pages over the course of 6 months is usually what you have to make a book. You can kind of work that into even a busy schedule and be able to, do something, try a new style, tell a different story, or just stretch different parts of your tools kit that you haven't done in a long time.
I agree with that. Actually, I think being a part of Anthology is a chance to share the workload. It's not, you don't have as much of a burden, on yourself as a creator, because, you're just a small part of a much larger project, but you're still contributing in a very meaningful way. And I think it gives creators the opportunity to not only collaborate with other creators and other editors on a very, very small scale, which it can be beneficial, but also for instance, with Russell and I, it gives us a part to work with creators that we've never worked with before. And plus, I got to work with other editors on Insider Art, which is something you never get to do. I mean, working with another editor on something is, especially, we worked with top editors on that project, and I had always wanted to work with Shelley Bond, and I'd never gotten an opportunity. And when else would I get that except on a project like that? So I think, that's what makes Anthology so valuable to both creators and editors, is that ability to stretch your creativity, not have that much of a commitment, plus, share the burden with others, and get things done within your schedule of all the other stuff you have going on, which is really, really cool.
Well, and as an editor, it's also you can take risks that you would never be able to take on another kind of and also by sort of distributing the risk, no one story is going to make or break an anthology. We had Ray and Paul Jenkins last time, and Christian Gossett, and so many amazing creators, Brandie and Carolyn, and we wanted to work with any of them. If their 8 pages or 4 pages or 2 pages didn't come in, or they didn't come in, they didn't look right, or we couldn't, it's not that is the be all end all, it is when you're trying to put together a comic that is the flagship title of your line, or even something that is due. You're able to put a deadline on it and be if you have your books in this day, you'll be in this anthology. If not, then we will go with whatever number. If it's 20 pages, if it's 120 pages, that's so and by doing that, it allows you to say, oh, Brandie has not been published before. I like Brandie's writing. Let's see what she can do. And I've never worked with Carolyn before, and also say, hey, I always want to work with Ray. Let's see, will he do 2 pages? Well, yeah, he'll do 2 pages because he wants to work with Kris. He wants to work with me. And you're able to by mitigating that risk, you're able to say, well, I know, Ray, you're never going to have time to do a book for me. But you could do this little story. And Carolyn and Brandie, I've never worked with you before. Brandie's never had a published credit before. But I'm willing to take that. You're able to take that risk to work with talent that you've always wanted to work with, and also just friends or new voices that you can take a chance on, and as a creator, you also have the ability to try, as I mentioned with before, try different styles, tell different stories, work in a genre that you're not known for. I always, I've known Jim Zub for a long time, and I picked up Pop Gun many years ago, and I was like, oh my God, Skull Kickers is in this book. And then it becomes a 40 issue run of a comic book. And it's great because the first anthology that we did, someone told me that they took that story and they made it a Kickstarter, like they made it a whole book. And so it's amazing to be able to like try these things and be like, I really love this story, or like, I did a good job on this story, but it's not like, I don't ever have to explore this story anymore now. And all of those things make the creative process of an anthology incredibly rewarding, I think, both editorially and creatively.
Well, let's go ahead and hear from Carolyn and Brandie. Carolyn, why don't you go first?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've always been into comics, even as a little kid, and I love the variety that you get, especially in anthologies. That's always been, I think, one of my favorite things to read. I mean, aside from just comics, but it's books too. So just being able to be a part too of a comic anthology in that regard, it's really exciting being able to work with so many people and getting that experience, as well as being able to, experiment, like Russ said, try new things and do things that you might not have done before. So especially coming in fairly new to this process, or at least with, working with someone on an anthology, it was extremely rewarding. Also, especially like as a creative person, you're always fighting against that imposter syndrome, like 100% of the time. So it's really helpful getting your feet wet, being able to work through things, troubleshoot, and just, being able to overcome little trials and tribulations, but the creative process too, and being able to work with other people, like, working with Brandie was such a delight. Half the time, always worrying about like, whether or not we can communicate well and work well together. And, we ended up being able to, so that was really, really fun. But yeah, just the things that you learn, the things that you're able to experience. Sometimes they might have little tidbits of personal stories in them, and other times it might be just entertainment. But as someone who likes a variety of things, I think comic anthologies also really encapsulate more of that kind of variety that people are able to offer, and, give everyone a little bit of something of everything. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And Brandie, what about you?
Yeah, I've realized that short stories are really how I've gotten into writing, and then playwriting, and then now to graphic novels, which I'm still pretty new at. But it really, this is what allowed me to break in for the first time, because honestly, I thought there was no way I could really do graphic novels because my artistic abilities are lots of stick figures. But here was a chance where I could partner up with an artist, and the commitment was not, let's do, an entire book, but let's do a couple pages. And I, connected with Carolyn, and the story was short enough that it wasn't an overwhelming commitment. And, we hit it off. I think we had some great aligned vision in our story, and ended up working so well that, we are now working on the third anthology on a piece together as well. And it's been a way for me, as someone new to the industry, to get to know different people in there, Russell and Kris, of course, and Carolyn I've worked most closely with, but even the other people in the anthology who I may not be working directly on pieces with, we're all in it together. It feels like when we're, promoting it or doing the Kickstarter, or coming up with interesting ways to cross promote with each other to help support the piece on a whole. So I've met quite a few pretty fantastic creators that way.
And those were quality stick figures, I might say. So don't sell yourself short.
Carolyn has to decipher what my stick figures look like.
Well, Brandie, oh, go ahead.
That's one of the things that I wanted to add is, when we're working alone so much of the time as creatives, that being part of an anthology sort of gives you, especially if the editors have a Facebook group where they have they build that into the community of it, it gives you an inlaid community that you all went through this singular trial together.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's a great point, Russell. Well, Brandie brought up a lot of great points regarding the creative process and the entire production process of creating an anthology. We know that creating a regular comic book, a standard comic book, is a lengthy and involved process, let alone a comic book anthology, which has exponentially more creators and more content to it. So this question is going to be specifically for Kris and Russell. What advice would you offer to aspiring creators and aspiring editors as well, who may be at the start of the anthology process? Where should they begin? Kris, why don't we start with you?
I would say that you most likely need a solid theme, a theme that kind of resonates with the fandom as well as the creators. You have to generate that interest first and foremost. I think that it's really super important that people latch onto it, because you can kind of feel when somebody's phoning it in versus when, you know, someone is really having a good time and has like a lot of ideas that they want to bring to the table and their excitement and their pitches. And, you know, that's more in terms of like, you know, the idea side of it. But I think when you're putting it together, like on the editorial side, like for Russell and I, you really need like a good mix of veterans mixed with new people. Like, and I think that's kind of the key to these things, because you want to bring new talent to the table and show people something they've never seen. You want to give new talent their break, but you also want the veterans like to be there side by side to boost it a little bit, because they also benefit from new talent coming into the industry. And so in that regard, it's like once you get your good theme, then you should focus on getting new talent alongside the veterans to make it like a full complete package.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that for me, I want to have 25% at least of like new creators. It's a little bit different for the third anthology that we're doing because it's like the wrap up of this volume. So there's considerably more people who we've worked with before than I normally would have. But I try to have like 2 to 3 like headliner people, you know, someone like Ray, who's worked a lot with Marvel, that whose names people would understand. We had Paul Jenkins, had Christian Gossett last time. We had having Trine Robbins this time. So like something that's good. People are going to be like, oh, like that person's in this anthology. Like I should buy it. And then you want to have, you know, a good selection of people who you've never worked with before, but maybe wanted to, or have never had a story before in an anthology, because like Kris said, like you want to break new talent, but also people read anthologies to find new talent. Like it is so as when you're thinking about even the sales part of it, like you want to have those people who are the bangers, you want to have the new people, and then you want to have people that you know will deliver, like people who you've worked with before, and you can say, okay, if all of the rest of the people fail, like there's still a book here. Like I will still have this amount of pages, and like I can sell this amount of pages, and like I know they're going to come in. So I think that is, for me, that's what gets me to sleep at night. Like I know that like a lot of people do not get their script in on time, or do not get their pencils, or they miss deadline. But like I know that by the end, these people are going to deliver a quality book. Like a quality story, and it will add up to, let's call it 100 out of 160 pages. Like I will have that guaranteed. And like some of them will be amazing, and some of them may be like acceptable, but they're all going to be of a quality level that like I can make a book out of there. And then some of the new people are going to drop out. Maybe some of the headliners get so busy they can't do it, or they can't do the page number. You know, maybe you'll get someone who's like, oh, I thought I could do 8 pages, but I could really do 2. That's happened before. And so you just want to make sure that as you're thinking about the anthology, you don't want to be reliant on people who have never done a book before, unless that is like you're so brand new that you like don't know anybody who has done books before. And that's a whole nother story. And then thematically, I can tell you that the theme is the most important thing, because as Kris mentioned, it drives the editorial, it drives the people who will submit, it drives the kind of people that submit, and it drives the fans that are going to buy the anthology. And the first book we did was called Monsters and Other Scary, and then the S word after that, which I won't say because it's Comic-Con. But and people said, well, this is great, but like it was so over the place. Like it was sci-fi monsters and fantasy monsters, and it was just like monsters and other scary things. Like, is this a horror anthology? Like people bought it and it was very successful, but when we put it on our table at a show, people would be very confused by it. So in the next time I said, well, what's your favorite fandom? And everyone said Lovecraft. And I said, awesome. I'm going to do the exact same thing I did with like themes thematically all over the place. Like, you know, some stories are going to be horror and some are going to be funny, but they will all be Lovecraft monsters. And like that, just codifying it in that theme. I've seen themes as tight as like ponies, like comedic pony stories. and as loose as we all go to the same creator groups. So we just did one called, Johnny's Creator Group. And I think that the best ones are in the medium, where you can say there's a fandom for this, but there are also creators that I know who love this thing and will bring their best to it and will bring their audience to it. And then you can create something that is, celebratory of that fandom. And as someone who doesn't do much fan work, like, I don't make fan art, I don't generally do like fan stories, to be able to be like, but this is like just my love letter to the fandom, has been really helpful. Was really helpful in thinking about how to do this Cthulhu anthology compared to our other anthologies that we've done in the past.
Absolutely. And Russell, you brought up a good point, which obviously is vital to the creative process for anthologies, and that is submissions. So this is going to be a two-part question, one for our editors and one for our creators. We'll start with the creators. I'm curious for each of you, what are you looking for in terms of the anthologies that you choose to submit to? And are there any red flags for projects that you would not want to be involved with? And Carolyn, why don't we start with you?
Oh, well, I mean, even for the first projects that I was looking at, and there have been other ones that I've sort of looked at before, part of it is organization. As a creative person, I'm also used to doing a lot of administrative stuff too, so I can understand a lot of back end stuff tends to need to happen in order for something to actually, get produced. But looking at it, seeing the attitude of the people involved, because obviously you don't want to work with people that you don't think you're going to actually enjoy working with. Seeing just the experience involved too. I mean, there's also projects too where people are, fairly new to the process, but at least they have a good attitude about it. But yeah, seeing things that are organized, seeing that, everyone's treated fairly, being able to see everything up front, that there's a lot of transparency is always very helpful. And then just being able to see that the content is something that you'd actually enjoy working with. I think those are just some basic things, but yeah.
Absolutely. And Ray, what about you?
Don't silence yourself, Ray.
I know. I was like, oh, they can't hear anything I say. Okay, so I agree a lot with what Carolyn said. It's, first of all, it's the professionalism of the editors. Like, when I was approached by Russell and Kris, I mean, I saw the names. So that just opened my ears up, like, okay, so I'm here, what do you guys got? And also the theme, Cthulhu, Elder Gods, what are we doing here? Like, what are we trying to do? If it's interesting to me, I mean, for me personally, it's got to be interesting to me. I don't really, at this point, when I pick an anthology, I actually don't care about, I was gonna sound terrible, but I don't necessarily care about the eligible fans, like I don't care about that. What I care is, do I care about it? Because by default, I can't be the only person. Someone else is gonna care. Somebody else is gonna be interested in that thing. So I just, kind of like go with that. And then just the clarity of what our vision is going to be. I need that. What are we doing here? Like, what kind of stories are we going to tell? What can and can't I do? Because that, is something that impede my freedom. Can I use bad language? Is there, is it rated PG, G? Like, what's our audience? That's when I actually care about the audience. What's our audience? And other things that make me say I don't want to do it. It's the same things that make me say I want to do it, right? So if I see a name and I know that person is going to be difficult to work with, like Carolyn was talking about, it's like, okay, I'll pass. Even if I love the editors or the other creative teams, and that's the other thing. If I see somebody that's on it, other creative teams that I admire, then I want to kind of hang out with them. Like, that's my way. It's a community of hanging out with them. And hey, I'm in this book too. Hey, I'm hanging out with the cool kids. So that's also one of the big things. Distributor, what I think larger and more outside of what we're trying to do, distribution is a huge thing. Kickstarter, that's when who is behind it is more involved. But if it's Kickstarter, because it's all about basically what Kris and Russell was saying, you need a healthy mix. You need the people who are going to sell the tickets, and then you need the people who are rookies to kind of like make a super cool whole piece. Because in the anthology, sure, it's a series of short stories, but it's a whole piece. And I'm sure, you know, as editors, that's what you guys are thinking of. When we set this thing on the table, what are we delivering? You know, it's not this hodgepodge of things. It's a single-minded vision. So yeah, like when I was working on maybe someday, which was, you know, it's a futuristic kind of version of, you know, the best possible outcome of humanity. I love that kind of stuff, like, because that really kind of speaks to who you are and your vision, what a perfect world is going to be. So I thought that was a great theme. I got to work with a creator that I really wanted to work with. So anyway, those are the things, you know, that I look for, and the things that I'll say, no thanks. You know, money is not that big of an issue at all, because for me, I'm just doing it for fun.
Those are all great points, Ray. Thank you. And Brandie, what about you? What are you looking for in an anthology?
Sure. And, you know, the Cthulhu is the first one I've been in. So, you know, being very new, I, you know, for the longest time, didn't even think I'd be eligible to write one, which probably goes to imposter syndrome and anxiety and self-doubt. So when I found the Cthulhu one, it was very open to new people who were, you know, who had good ideas, who were enthusiastic, which I can be. And I've been friends with Russell for years, and I've seen, you know, the way he puts out his work, the enthusiasm, the professionalism. And so when I saw that he had, you know, a call for submissions, I immediately thought, I want to be a part of this project. And I had a lot of fun with Cthulhu and a lot of fun being creative with that. But honestly, at that point, it was, I want to be a part of this almost regardless of what his theme is. So knowing that people that I'm going to be working with, the team is great. I'd say being pretty new in the industry, but a red flag would be, you know, some people that I trust in the industry are like, oh, so-and-so's kind of shady to work with, or, you know, these other people have had a bad experience. You know, it's a much smaller world than you think it is. So for me, it was a lot about finding the team I wanted to be a part of and kind of getting excited about it and going for it. When I applied, I kind of just met Carolyn over trying to come up with, you know, a team for this. So getting her on board, getting her excited, seeing her sketches, seeing it come into life was just so exciting. So it just became really a fun process.
And we're going to switch things over to our editors. So editors, Russell and Kris, what are you looking for as an ideal submission for your anthology? Russell, why don't we start with you?
Well, to follow all of my guidelines is number one. Like, actually follow them, like read them and follow them. Like, I know this seems like silly, but I mean, half of these submit. I mean, Kris, right? Like at least 25% of the submissions like don't follow, like, and they're immediate
number
cut.
one thing I have to agree with you is following the submission guidelines. If you can't do that, like, come on. I agree with you.
Yeah. But and like people are like, well, what if it's a great pitch or something? I say, well, like it's like the brown M&Ms, right? Like I forget if it was Def Leppard or whoever, but it's like they said that they wanted a bowl of M&Ms with no brown M&Ms, and like while that sounds like a diva move, what they were doing was seeing if someone read the writers well enough to like do their stupid this thing, because if they didn't do that, then they couldn't trust that the pyrotechnics were going to go off in the way that they needed them to. So in a way, it like seems like a petty thing, but on the other side, like when you're calling out submissions, if someone can't follow at any step of the process, like it's very like I know that the likelihood of them getting to the end of it is much lower.
That's agreed. I have to say that's like the biggest red flag. I have to agree with you, Russell. Like, and that goes all the way back to when I was like an editor at Image. Like, honest to God, like, you know, it was just, if you can't follow even one of those, and like the biggest one was like the pitching process. Like, you know, you're asking for an elevator pitch because we don't have time to read through like pages and pages and pages of you describing your plot lines. Like we need an elevator pitch, you know, and that's like number one, send us a short paragraph. You know, if I'm getting a meandering pitch that goes on and on and on that can't get to the point, like it's out. Like I just like, and we've had submissions like that where I'm literally reading, it's like an Excel spreadsheet and the block is huge because someone just like went on and on and on, and you're like, this is the whole script.
But on the other hand, but the other half of that happens too. Like someone will like do a pitch and it's so bland and you're like, I don't know, like I just don't know. And like we literally had this last time where a pitch, like I was like, I don't know, it could be good, like I like this creator, like the art is good, but like it just didn't get in because I didn't know. And then the creator ended up doing the story and I was like, this is great, like this is a great story, like I know that, why didn't any of this come across in the pitch? And I actually asked him if he would come into the end, if we could use it in the anthology, and we ended up using it because it was just so I think a lot of creators kind of shoot themselves in the foot because they either over-explain or they write a pitch that I've seen 100 times before without telling me what the hook is. And while you can artistically make a story that is very similar to other stories that exist, in a short story, in an anthology submission, like you really need a hook, like you really need a twist to like make it land.
Yeah, that's true. And I think like also you have to tell us what that is, and that's like important. Like there's a lot of times where like they don't tell us the ending and it's like, well, I'm the editor, I have to know the ending. Like I can't just be left hanging here. Like that's, you know, it's one of those things. But I mean, and the same also goes for like artwork. Like we need to see a sequential page. Like we need to know that you can like do the work, because if I don't have a piece of sequential art, if you're sending me a pinup or if you're sending me something that's like a sketch, like I can't tell, you know, and that's just going to get a no. I'm not going to follow up with you. I'm not going to hunt you down and be like, oh, hey, so listen.
Yeah, I mean,
I need more.
So many people do not send the artwork that explains what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. And now the caveat to that is Kris will often, because Kris handles the submissions, because I know most of the people who are submitting personally, and I don't want to like, I don't want anyone to plead to me to get in, and B, I don't want like to have that on me to be like, oh, you denied my submission when like we're eating dinner in 6 months. So like Kris handles all of that, a lot of that stuff, but often she'll say, so we have a system where it's like a red, a yellow, and a green. Mm-hmm. And especially in the last one, less so in this one, but in the last one, you know, she had a lot of yellows, and sometimes I would go back, and the yellow was because like I don't see any sequential art. And I was like, I personally know this person and know that they can deliver. Yeah. And that is the one caveat. But you were then forcing one of the editors to make a stand. And like, it's a little bit easier for me. Like, it's my company. Like, I like will if I rubber stamp something and it sucks, like I'm the one who has to deal with that. But like with it's not so easy for someone who like works on a book, who doesn't own the book, like, and just is hired to be like, I'm staking my reputation on this person, even though you cannot see what they're doing. Like, I believe in like this enough. And I just don't think you should force your editor to do that. Like it's just not. So if you've never done sequential pages before, like do some sequential pages before you submit to the anthology. And I will say that my biggest red flag for submitting to an anthology is if they do not require like an entire full team to get together before they submit. And that happens a lot with a lot of people. And I mean, I get offered to be in anthologies often because I do anthologies, but like so often I see a submission and it's just like, what is your idea? Do you have an art team? No. And you're like, oh, you didn't even give them a script. There's like nothing there. Like you have no idea whether it's going to be good. And so, yeah, that's number two, not putting. So number one is the story that Kris, not following instructions. Number two is number 2A and 2B are the log line and the art.
Fair enough. Rules to live by, everyone. Listen to Russell. We're actually going to stick with our editors for another moment before going back to our creators, because we're going to be talking about timelines, which are vital to the success of any project. So what advice would each of you offer to assist editors and creators in creating and maintaining content deadlines? Kris, why don't we start with you?
Well, I'd have to say that number one, you should always expect a delay. People just generally don't hit deadlines. It's just a fact. I would say if you're an editorial, your deadline should be at least 4 to 6 weeks before you actually need it. That's what my advice would be. And not to tell those creators that they have that extra time, because they will take it no matter what. And I know for a fact, like as an example with like Cthulhu, I know that there is a creative team that has not even like spoken to Russell or me yet, but they have expressed that they want to do a story, but they know they have until end of the year. So I haven't heard a thing, and we're already going into June, but I know that they're going to do it and they're going to wrap it up. But it's just one of those things where like you give them a little bit, they take a mile. So an editorial thing is just always have your deadlines scheduled way further than what you need them for. And with creators, managing your deadlines, like honestly, just I have seen a lot of people just turn stuff in because they're like, hey, I know it's way ahead of the deadline, but I have time right now, so I'm doing it. So here it is. Hope it's not too early. Never too early. Never. It's never too early. I can't stress that enough. Like, I don't want to get 50 of them in all the way at the end and get overloaded. Like I
will.
Yeah, you will. You will. It's like just a fact. So if you're turning it in early, do it when you have time. Just do it. Like, honest to God, that's the best advice I can give. It's just it's a few pages. It's 4 to 6, 4 to 8, whatever it is. Do it a little bit at a time. Manage yourself correctly, and just get it in. Don't wait till the last minute.
And
Here,
Russell?
mine is a little bit different than Kris's. Is have a hard deadline and stick to it. Like the beauty of the anthology process is if people don't hit the deadline, you still have pages from people who did hit the deadline, and you don't have to have those other people in the book. Like you're overfilling. Like I always overfill an anthology. That's because you're going to have people drop out. You're going to have people that like their story can't go in, and you're going to have people that, you'll have people in the middle of the thing be like, I have this cool 2-page story. And you're like, I really want to work with you. So like, okay, like just come on, like you're in now and you're in the anthology. That happened with Megan Hutchison, the first anthology. I met her at a con and she's like, oh, I really love Cthulhu. And I never met her before. And I was like, you want to do a 2-page story? Like I literally will always take a 2-page story from someone, which is a good tip. Like always have a 2-page story ready, because people will always need a 2-page story to fill. I will tell you that we set a very lax deadline. We have roughly 6 months to basically do up to 8 pages. And 90% of the stories come in the last month, last 2 weeks, last week. And many artists have just told me, like, I'm not even going to do it until the last month because I'm going to do the other stuff. I'm like, that's fine. But like, I personally, as an editor, when I tell you you are not going to be in this anthology, I want to be able to look back and say, you literally had 6 months. Like, I'm not being like, I've told you every month that like, this is what the deadline is. This is what the deadline is. And like, you didn't take advantage of that, and that's fine. But like, you do not have an excuse, and I will not take the excuse, because if you start taking the excuse, then like everyone thinks they can blow the deadline and still get in the book. Now, that being said, I said there's a hard deadline. There are always exceptions to a hard deadline, because there are people whose parents die.
Yes.
Who like were 2 months away from the book and like got a Marvel book that they're doing, and they're like, hey, I like, sorry, like I know I'm gonna do it this weekend, but like I'm literally on deadline. That wasn't specifically at Ray, but
Oh, it totally was me.
We all knew it was Ray.
But you don't want to be so hard. Like the goal of the anthology is to be a fun experience, right, for everyone. Like there's one piece of advice that you can give. It's like, you have to be dictatorial in how it goes for the sake of the project and the sake of the creators, and because everyone wants structure. Everyone thinks being the cool person like means like letting people like slide and do whatever they want, but like I've never met a creator that wants that. Every creator who talks about the people that they respect as editors are the ones who are forgiving, creative, understanding, but also like tell them exactly what they need to do and have those deadlines to meet. And you have to be that person, because everyone wants to be part of an anthology. Nobody wants to run an anthology. This is the secret to the entire comics game. If you are a creator who wants to be in anthologies or move their career forward, you can find tons of creators at a way higher scale than you think you ever like thought you could operate at to be in your anthology, because everyone wants to be in a good anthology. Everyone gets embarrassed when they're in a bad anthology, but everyone wants to be in a good anthology. And if you can just organize that together and give people deadlines and stick to those deadlines, you will find that like people will start to respect you and want to work with you.
Can I add something from the creator side?
Absolutely.
Especially as a newbie creator in graphic novels, I've made it a mission to be extremely punctual on my deadlines. Discussing our timeline with Carolyn on my team to make sure we make sure to get it in on time, early whenever possible, because I look at it as, I want to be as great to work with as, the piece that I'm giving them, so that it's not just the art's good, or the story's good, but I don't like working with that person. I, want to, especially right now, being pretty unknown, want to build up the reputation of being known. Okay, this is a person we can rely on. They're going to get the story in on time. They're going to be a team player about it, so that they have those in the mind, the next time I submit to an anthology.
Yeah. I mean, Kris,
Absolutely.
you can confirm this or deny it, or if you or say that you don't have this, but like I have a list. Like I keep a list of the people who I know are going to deliver, and I keep a list of the people I know who are not going to deliver, and like people that do what Brandie said and like deliver a great story on time, like they go into the list of like I can now hire them way easier.
That list is so extensive, and it even goes into how long it takes to reply to an email. Like for real, like if like you're not getting back to me for days, I'm like, I can't trust this person to hit a deadline. If they can't even return an email, yeah,
Absolutely.
there's definitely.
Well, that's on the creator side. That's really it. If you know you're going to be late, talk to your editor. It's not that hard. That's all you got to do. I mean, that's really it. Communication is key at all points. Or even if you're early, however you're going to do it, or change the story or whatever. The worst things I've ever heard from editors is like, well, we read on this thing. When I got the pages back in the story, this is completely different than what I was expecting. Now you have to go back, re-edit, or figure out, because it could be something completely off. And from the creator side, I hear other creators say, well, I'm going to try to sneak this in. They're going to hate that. It's not going to be cool.
Sneak it in the next pitch.
Yeah.
Carolyn, anything? Oh, go ahead, Ray, please.
I was going to say, to my credit, if you're going to do that, like, and speaking to what Brandie was saying about the different qualities, well, your reputation is going to precede you wherever you go, as you hear from Kris and Russell. But the best advice I got as a creator is to be on time, great to work with, and do great work. And two of them will continue to get you work, right? So, all three, you're going to always be working. If you're all three, you shouldn't have to worry about anybody saying no to you. And just so you guys know, my 2 pages was pretty great.
They were great, and you were late. You were great.
Oh yeah, I was great.
But you did email me well before the deadline and tell me that you were going to be late.
Yeah.
And like tell me and like express and that happened like I think on the to you, but someone else in the last anthology did the same thing. Like they were like, hey, I've got a book on DC now. I should have done this earlier. I need a week. Can I get a week? And I was like, yes, that is a good reason. Or like there's all sorts of good reasons that like that editors will accept. But you have to be open with the editor.
Yeah, you have to talk.
Absolutely. Well, as with all panels, unfortunately, we are very quickly coming to an end. I want to give the last word to Carolyn. Carolyn, anything you'd like to add in terms of how you manage your timelines?
Oh gosh. Well, I keep an Excel sheet in my calendar app, but the communication, just touching on that point again, just making sure that everyone on your team is on the same page about when things need to get in, making sure that you're catching up with each other. If there are hiccups, yeah, making sure that you say something, because the last thing anyone needs is someone ghosting on them with a group project. So yeah, basically just making sure to keep on that. I try to keep alarms and reminders like up the wazoo, post-it notes, that kind of thing, because the last thing you need when you're getting distracted with a bunch of life situations is, out of sight, out of mind. So I try, I try to put whatever reminders I can, but generally speaking, if it's something that I really care about too, it's always going to be something that's going to be first and foremost in my mind anyway. But yeah, just making sure to keep write things down, just whatever to reinforce the fact that certain things need to get done by a certain time, and just making sure you're touching base with everyone. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, great points, everyone. And thank you for sharing your experiences, both from the editorial and creative processes of creating an anthology. As I mentioned, sadly, we are very quickly coming to an end of this panel. But before we do, I always want to allow time for each of you to share any upcoming projects or social media and websites where we can find you when you're not doing this panel. So Ray, why don't we start with you?
I'm at RA Height pretty much everywhere, Instagram, Twitter. I was off Facebook for over a year, but I got back on for family reasons. But you can still find me there. I think the next thing that's coming out for me is I want to say Star Wars Dr. Aphra number 10. So that's it. I don't know about the next anthology though.
Excellent. And Brandie, what about you?
So I'm pretty much everywhere at Brandie June. It's Brandie with an IE. My next anthology will be Cthulhu number 3. And as I mentioned, I just put out my debut novel, Goldspun, if people like fairy tale retellings.
Which got a sequel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So go pre-order that.
Absolutely. And Kris, what about you?
So the projects I have out right now, there is Summoner's War Legacy that came out from Skybound. Issue 2 should be hitting the stands, I think, next week. And that goes all the way through issue 6 that I'm on. As well as the web novel Firstborn Divided Loyalties by CJ Young on Tapas. And then, of course, Cthulhu Is Hard to Spell number 3, Battle Royale. And I think that's all I have that's up and coming or out on the stands right now. And you can reach me at Kris_Simon on Twitter.
And Russell?
First, I want to say also check out Insider Art, because if you want to know how an editor works and what an editor can do, like it's 7 or 8 editors and they all have their own style and unique flavor. And like, it's a great anthology, not just because it's a great anthology, but because it can really show you the power of one editor. I always say it's like the first thing I've ever read that like was an editor's anthology. We have the 3rd Cthulhu book coming out in March. If you would like to know more about it, you can go to CthulhuIsHardToSpell.com and sign up to get a preview of the last book we worked on, Cthulhu Is Hard to Spell, The Terrible Twos. You can find me on at russellnohelty.com, at wannabepress.com. We also have an app called Wannabe Plus, which is on iOS, Android, and at app.wannabepress.com, where you can check out a whole bunch of our old books like Cthulhu.
And last but not least, Carolyn.
Well, like Brandie mentioned, we're working on the next part of the anthology series for the Cthulhu series. That's my only current one that's going to be coming out at least soon, aside from private projects. But you can usually find me online on Instagram, other social media, but Instagram's probably the easiest. Art of Carolyn Carter. And I usually post other things like my online portfolio, or if I have other venues that I'm working on there. So.
Excellent. And you can find more about Fanbase Press at fanbasepress.com. We're on all of the social medias. You can learn more about our publishing line of comics and graphic novels, as well as our support of creators through reviews, interviews, podcasts, and panels like this one. But I want to say a huge thank you to all of the amazing folks on this panel. This was very informative, and you're also approachable and charismatic. So I can't imagine anyone that would not want to work with you on an anthology. But again, a huge thank you to all of you. Thank you to the viewers out there, and thank you to San Diego Comic-Con for the opportunity. Have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.